Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. This album review is on the Motels' third album, which is called All for One, which was released in 1982. Um, this is their second appearance on my channel. I did review their second album, which was Careful. I gave it a 57 out of 100, which I think is a pretty good album. Um, this album was really what kind of launched them to really, almost, I wouldn't say superstardom, but for that year, those 2 years, with Only the Lonely and Take the L, like such a, Only the Lonely might be one of the best. I guess maybe I wouldn't say I don't know if it's soft rock or to me it's kind of like a lounge song in a way, but I don't know if it's a soft rock or a ballad, but probably one of the strongest pop songs of that year, and probably maybe even one of the more successful songs from a lesser known band at the time. Um, this album is obviously a strong blend of rock and also sort of evolving early '80s new wave. Um, I think along with like in some ways like the '80s in a lot of ways was kind of the coming out party for a lot of like female lead singers and just lead um, performers, dancers, whatever. If it was Madonna or Tina Turner or Cyndi Lauper, whoever it was in the early '80s, just it really kind of changed the landscape when you think of like Heart and like Pat Benatar and the Motels and maybe even the Pretenders as well. Like they were really strong female lead singers that not they weren't just your Linda Ronstadt, your Olivia Newton-John, where they're just kind of like they're singing in front of in front of the house band, right? Like collect some good musicians, and hey, this girl's got a good voice, she's pretty as well. Let's put her on an album, But it's different when now the strong females are leading rock bands. You know what I mean? Like this, it's just like it kind of went from middle '70s, just from females, kind of being your Karen Carpenter, your Anne Murray and stuff like that. Like, you know what I mean? Captain and Tennille, whoever it was, like, kind of just like singing. And now they're like really strong uh, front women of rock bands, like powerful ones too. Like the girls that, have a strong point of view and aren't intimidated by a male dominated industry, let alone a male dominated genre. And I just think that like the Pretenders and Pat Benatar and Hart and the Motels just are really groundbreaking in the time as far as like showing that they could you know lead a strong rock band to success and also have great straight stage presence and also be able to sing really strong, but not just a pretty face. You know what I mean? Like it's. I don't think they get enough respect for helping that in the late '70s and early '80s. Um, Obviously, my I think when I think of this album, it's not as consistent as some other albums are, but it has obviously some super high notes. Only Lonely and Take the L are probably the best two songs on here, and they are the most popular, and it's warranted. Um, our, Martha Davis, the lead singer, is obviously the main draw of the band, the leader of the band, the most dynamic part of the band, you could say. She's strong, powerful, and also a kind of a sultry voice as well. Just a very good balanced rock and roll voice. Especially when you think of like her performance on like Art Fails or Only the Lonely or Apocalypso. Like she's just really strong voice, and I really like um, when she does kind of the smoother songs, and I think her voice fits really well in that. Overall, the band is strong. It's It's got your usual new wave and rock instruments, your keyboard, your guitar, your bass, your drums, but also they do a good job of introducing other sounds, other instruments in there, whether it be horn or saxophone or but they're pretty much tied into like a rock band. Nothing extraordinary. I don't think any really band member kind of stands out really in this album. I do like when they have a little bit of edge to their songs, like in Art Fails and So LA. Like I like when they have a little edge. That's kind of when they bring that kind of rock music into the sort of a new wave rock style of which is very much like sort of like the Pretenders and stuff, just sort of adding a keyboard, and but it's not. I love dance music and electronic music, so I don't necessarily have any Pretenders albums. I might have one, maybe one cassette of the Pretenders at the most, but and I don't have any Pat Benatar stuff. I don't have any Heart stuff. I don't mind some of their songs for sure, and I like a couple here and there from all those three bands, but I don't own any of them like I do the Motels, and it's probably because of her voice. A couple songs for sure that really stand out to me, and then also Martha Davis's voice, and the keyboard, and the keyboard. So and then of course after you buy them, then you listen to them, and then you end up liking a little bit more songs, hopefully, and then you end up like me with the Motels. With I appreciate their music over the years and their albums. When I think of the overall, the individual songs, there's a couple, maybe in misdirections. When I think of the opportunities for the album, the production is a little flat, but again, that's 1982. Point. I can't say enough about how bad 1982 was on a production level of like the songs are where I don't necessarily like overly mastered, albums that are like really really loud, but then there's some albums that are really low volume, and they seem to all come from the early 80s. It seems like it just seems like the dynamics in like the early 80s were just kind of lacking, and it always kind of seems to come up that it's like around 1982. I don't know what it is about that year, but they were still using the proper 70s studios, and I would think all the analog and everything would be sort of perfected by 1982, but I think it's something have to do with in the maybe the FCC or the mastering, which was I think sort of maybe fairly new at that time. But just the levels and the dynamics of some of these albums in like 1982 are just kind of a little flat, and it could be some of the microphone techniques of 82. Although I would think again that microphone placement and all those things and recording a traditional rock band like this would be pretty straightforward by this time, but I don't know what it is. It just seems it's probably more in the mastering process and just the volumes are a little low. But again, it's always the dynamics, and they're just the drums are kind of flat. Everything's kind of flat for the most part. It's well balanced. I think overall, it's like the vocal singer's the lead. They do a good job. Like if there's any kind of solo or something like that, it's kind of featured, and everything seems pretty strong as far as the mixing of everything sounds together, but just lack of dynamics. And there's some and there's some songs that are kind of a little short. Um, every track on here is less than 4 minutes, and a couple of them are less than three. And unfortunately, like none of the songs are really kind of delved into and really expanded upon and really it's like the only time they do a solo is like they bring in a saxophone for like 2 bars or some horns or something like that, and that's really all the solos. And I'm not really a solo fan, but I do like a little, maybe a couple bars in between the last chorus and into the bridge, and a couple more bars and then back into the vocals. Just a little bit more instrumental music kind of, and maybe wouldn't say jam bandish because I'm not the biggest like hey, let's just jam and record it. But I do feel like there's segues in between parts of the songs that could be delved into more, where it kind of solidifies and establishes the rhythm or the groove or the melody parts or the harmony or maybe some ad libbing on the vocal or just a little bit of more less pop structure. I think would have helped this album. There's some songs that are kind of low and some songs that are fairly high. It's maybe not as consistent in the middle as I generally would like. In fact, I got 4 stars, four songs that are in between a star and 2 stars, which is okay to good. So that's a good 40% of the album. 4 out of 10 songs is below good for me. So it's got some opportunity. Mission of Mercy, I got a 1.25 stars. Take the L, 3 stars. Only Lonely's obviously a classic, 4 stars. What can you say about that track? I really like Art Fails too, 3 stars. So right in there, tracks 2, 3, 4 are my 3 favorites. Changed My Mind, probably my least liked song on the album. It's kind of a lounge song. I get it. I get Martha Davis sings really well on it, and I appreciate the change of pace and trying something different, but it kind of feels like just like a low budget lounge band singing. Like it just doesn't it just doesn't really do anything for me. It's just okay, and I think the only reason why it's okay is because of Martha's voice is nice to hear. So in LA, 2.25 stars. Tragic Surf. It's kind of an odd song. 1.75 stars. Apocalypso, one of my favorites of the second half. It's 2.75 stars. Uh, he Hit Me, 1.5 stars. And it felt like a kiss. I guess I should say that. He hit me and it felt like a kiss. 1.5 stars. And then Forever Mine, I think, is one of the better tracks on the second half too. It's tied with Apocalypso for 2.75 stars for the second half. So overall, it's 23.25 stars divided by 10, so it's a 2.35. So I have it equal to their second album, Careful, 57 out of 100, for different reasons. This one obviously has a couple high points. Maybe even one super high point with Only Lonely, but I do feel like uh, overall their second album is a little bit more consistent, and I like their fourth album probably the best. Something Robbing, something, I always forget the name of that. And I do like parts on their fifth album as well. I don't own their fifth album though, and I still have to review their first album, which I don't own that as well. I just have the middle 3 albums of the 5. Um, I think, yeah, I just have the middle 3 albums. Maybe I have the first 4. I always forget. But yeah, 57 out of 100. I think it's a pretty good album. It's a solid album that has some highlights, but it also has some missteps on it, and it blends rock and roll into a more slick 80s new wave sound, and I appreciate that too. It's very early 80s sound, and I like that because it reminds me of when I was a kid and I was first getting into like music, and I mean I was 6 years old when this album came out, and I certainly remember um, on the radio a lot. Only the Lonely that year was played a lot. I was into music very early on. In fact, some of my earliest memories are all music related from when I was like 4 or 5 or 6. I'll tell the story again, but I did tell it in another video, but it's just real quick. I can remember being like 4 years old, and in I think it was my brother's Fisher Price turntable. The ones with the big plastic uh, tone arms, and it was just the cheap one, probably white and blue and yellow, like Fisher Price colors, right? And I had 2 records at the time, and one was Queen, um, which I don't know if it was the single or if, I remember it being. I'm pretty sure it was a 12 inch, but it could have been the Game. It probably was the Game because I know the song that I'm talking about was um, Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And so I'm assuming it was the 12-inch of Crazy Little Thing Called Love, but I don't know if it was on 12-inch. So I'm assuming it was the album The Game, and I played that track, and that was the song, and I took it off, and I played. My sister had a Blondie record, it was Parallel Lines, and from that moment forth, I just never played the Queen album again, and I kept playing Blondie, and Blondie was my favorite, probably first favorite band that was like felt like it was like, wow, like this is like the future of music, like this has all kinds of styles of music on it. And then looking back, I mean, Blondie had disco, even had a little bit of hip hop, had a little rock music, um, with her punk attitude and just a slick new wave sound, and even a little bit of reggae, like The Tide Is High, right? So, I mean, Blondie had sort of a great balance of everything. And I think that's what the basis was of my music taste, and why I got to like hip hop in the 80s, and hard rock, and electronic music, and what I mean, and some punk music. I felt like I've always been pretty well rounded, and it's because of probably the foundation of that one record of being Blondie. And to that point, my my even though Queen had rock music on it, like that would seem to be like sort of rock pop to me. But forever from that one album, my music taste went towards more alternative, electronic, more dancey, disco, anything alternative, punk, hard rock, reggae. Just directed me towards looking into that music, and I didn't even know at the time how important that was. But I remember that memory. I remember sitting there as a 4 or 5 year old kid and playing those records, and being like, nope, wow, this record's amazing. And so I have a lot of memories. So I got into music when I was young. So even if that was 80, 81, by 1982, I can remember being in like the roller skating ring, and skating to like the cars and the motels, and uh, who knows, even maybe even Foreigner or REO Speedwagon or something like that when I was 6 years old. But that was just the pop radio before I really kind of got into the music that I liked by the time I was like 8 or 9. But it's funny. I remember those years like it was yesterday, and I think that's the great thing about if you grew up with music, like you can remember like special tracks, doing special things. Like roller skating to the cars. I can remember that like it was yesterday. I went with my next door neighbor at my grandparents' house, and I think he invited us like, hey, you want to go roller skating? I was like, yeah, let me go ask my parents. And that was probably the only. I can't remember going to the roller skating rink very very often. I was not really into roller skating, and probably by 82, 83, it was sort of going out anyways. But yeah, I remember being on the on the floor roller skating, and Magic came on from Cars, I remember it like it's yesterday. I have a crazy knack for remembering certain moments with music, just in general. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts on Motels. Pretty good album, 57. It's got some low points, but it's got some high points. If there's a little bit more consistency, I think this one would get into the 60s and be a good record. But it's pretty good. It's just right under there. But yeah, thanks for watching. Curious if you have a top 3 songs on here, and what's your favorite Motels album? All right, thanks a lot.